I think the weaponisation of mass immigration actually is a really important part of this topic. Because they're changing the fabric of the culture.
The globalist agenda.
That's what I was just about to say. But they have to change the fabric of the culture to get away with the other things they're trying to do. And the digital ID bill leading to our ultimate tyranny, basically, where they will, be able to measure what we do and who we are and our social credit score. And they need immigration to break down the community that will stand against it. So there'll be no unified community. And the reality is I look around here and I see a lot of heritage Australians. There is some notable exceptions, and I'm not saying that to disclude you from this debate. But the reality is this group does not look like anything that I see when I walk down the streets of Melbourne on any other given day. And why is that? Why is that? Are people coming from Beijing that have already accepted the reality that there is a social credit score and a digital currency, and they're not going to fight against it? Or are they from Mumbai thinking the same thing? And they're not going to stand up for values that we hold dear to our hearts? Because is there something fundamentally wrong at the heart of mass immigration? Of multiculturalism at all costs, and all you can see is diversity, and diversity has to be a good thing. It can never have any criticism levelled at it, because any criticism levelled at it makes you akin to being Adolf Hitler. And it's perverse to talk about it, but it's the truth. Because I went down to Traralgon late last year to fight back on behalf of the community down there because they'd lost access to their native timber industry. And I looked out at a sea of white faces having their industry taken away from them with no ability to defend themselves because they cannot identify in their collective name, because if they do identify in their collective name, they are totally dismissed from polite society. So I had the audacity at the end of my speech to talk about them as a collective of white men in particular that were being attacked, and their white families as a result that would not be able to inhabit that community anymore because they would have no jobs to go to. And The Age trolled my page. They asked me for comment. And then they wrote an article when I gave them no comment, the article they would have written if I had have given them comment anyway, which stated that I was basically the next Adolf Hitler. And it's funny, and it's a joke, and it should be seen as very perverse in the light of what we've seen since the 7th of October, what's happening in the Middle East. And what did happen instead of that day? That there was political representatives there listening to my speech. It might be the reason why Warren's had trouble with some people even turning up today, because they didn't want to see me on the same card as them. Because those parliamentarians that were laughing as I was speaking and engaging with the crowd, not dissimilar to what's been happening so far today, were clapping loudly. Once that article was printed in The Age, they ran a mile. They're scared of giving me and people like me any political representation because they know it's death to their career. And these are the people we're meant to champion as being on the alternative right in far as the parliamentary process is concerned, because they know full well that the parliamentary process has been cucked since the loss of the Second World War for the Germans, basically, because now they use that same narrative against us. Because what happened last time someone spoke in the collective identity for a group of people that have my skin's pigmentation? Therefore, ergo, it's the same thing again. And the media is complicit in that weaponisation. And I've heard Alex Antich's name mentioned and Malcolm Roberts, and these are notable exceptions, but these men also know the limitations of their role inside of the parliamentary process. And if they were to step outside of this so-called Overton window, this meta-narrative by 1 or 2 inches, that their own party, those other people lining up in that party who want their plum job in the Senate, would use it against them to get rid of them so we could have another cuck in the parliament that cannot dare represent your people's collective interest. And the weaponisation of the Digital ID Bill is just more of the same. Well, who is Julie Inman Grant, the E-Safety Commissioner? Where did she spring from? Who is she? WEF, exactly. Well, why does she have control in the parliamentary process?
Why do we listen to WEF anyway?
Why is she getting 410,000 Australian dollars every year to decide what we can see or cannot see? And why were they so concerned about what happened to the priest, Mari? Because he has no friends. He has no political friends because he called out the COVID agenda. He's called out Islam, and he's called out Zionism. And I must say I have absolute respect for the faith of the man who goes back to the word that he obviously finds contained in the gospel for him to give him the strength and the courage to stand up for truth. And that's why they don't want you seeing that video, because they don't want you getting any ideas on why there might be some reasonable criticism of mass immigration. Their wonderful multicultural project that cannot be criticised at all, because that is their religion. That is their religion. Diversity is their religion. And Katie Gallagher, who is the finance minister responsible for the Digital ID Bill, is also responsible for the public service. And it's interesting that recently she's come out and she's said, well, the public service needs to represent the Australian community, and at the moment it's only pegged at 11% for diversity, so it needs to go up to 25%. And that sounds wonderful, and diversity is a lovely word, but what it means is the exclusion of me. There's a good chance they wouldn't use me in the public service anyway now. There's a few chance I've said a few things that might be on record that might preclude me from getting a job there. But nonetheless, what about my children and my children's children? If they wanted to get a job there, who is it? Who are these people that can make their money as parasites off the legacy of what my forebears did to create this country in the first place? And how dare I talk about it, unless, of course, I'm full of shame and apology for talking about it? Because of what will supposedly happen to the Indigenous people on this landmass, supposedly, through a Marxist education system deciding what history will be so they control the present and then control the future. And in the meantime, they can divvy up as much as Australia as they want and sell off parcels of land for as much money as they possibly can to millions of people from all corners of the globe, and somehow they're not responsible for the destruction of Indigenous landscape. What a perversity. But don't see it. Don't see it if you want to keep your job. And that's what the digital ID is about, ultimately. It's about constricting your freedom of speech. So you know your freedom of speech is constricted. So whilst you might have these thoughts in the privacy of your own home and amongst your loved ones, you will never dare utter them in a public arena or a public forum. Well, I implore you people to find your courage and stand up. I've got my friend here from Poland with Solidarity flag up there. So many East Europeans in the so-called freedom movement. Is it any surprise because they have seen these machinations before and they know what it means. And there is a globalist tyranny at hand, and people like Katie Gallagher, who's been a part of the Labor Party since she was, a teenager at university, has more fealty to the Labor Party than she has to the Australian people. And don't think that Peter Dutton will prove any different. So I think you need to know the nature of the battle you're engaged in. It's almost in many respects a forlorn hope, because they do hold the heights. They hold the heights of the media and all the institutions that ultimately run upon an anti-white narrative because of your white supremacy, your inherited white supremacy. They should have told that to my grandfather when he was fighting with the 2nd 43rd against Rummel's divisions in Tobruk. And his mother asked his older brother to go over there to look after him to make sure he was safe. He never met his older brother because his older brother got blown up before he had a chance to see him. So perhaps they can talk, perhaps Katie Gallagher can talk to my deceased grandfather's spirit about his so-called white privilege. And that, my friends, is the narrative that has to be smashed, because that is the narrative that all the other globalist narratives are predicated upon. Lockstep. So don't be afraid, don't be ashamed to call it out. Because I've been calling it out for a little while now, and I'm still here, I'm still alive, I'm fed, I'm watered. Apparently I'm appreciated as well, so... Your husband was murdered by who? There you go. There it was. And if you couldn't see the political change that was occurring, you just needed to look at it. It was symbolic. Black Lives Matter protest. These guys doing this. What? At the height of the restrictions. At the height of the restrictions. The so-called freedom movement. The right-wing fascists, or whatever they called us. Thanks, Sally McManus, for that little epithet. That was very nice of you. Another parasite. You guys were granny killers. And that was the political changing of the guard. There's a great philosopher who said basically pandemics are a portal into a new future for the world. They're a portal into a new future. We cannot pretend that we will not be part of this new future, or we can turn our backs on it, but by hell, we can have some design on how it will be orchestrated. I think I'm done. Thanks, guys.